Hi, Andee here, and I'm wearing my new pattern. This is called the AF101. I have given up on naming things. I'm now going with the number system. Everything in the hundreds will be sweaters, 200s probably will be hats, 300s scarves, and so on, and shawls. I have given up giving names. It is very hard. I have such a hard time. Every name's been taken. So I think for organizing system and also with my designing, if I start out with a number, I can save it as a file in my computer and I can search for it better. So my plan is all my patterns will have a number. So this is like AF101, and then I'll have my name that I like to call it. Just kind of like we do at the farm for the alpacas. They get super fancy names for if they're in the show ring, if they're going to be show animals. And then we have nicknames for them on the farm. Like we'll have a super fancy name and then we'll call them Buddy or just a nickname. So the whole time I worked on this, I called this the Rose Pullover. The color here is rose, so that's where I came up with the name Rose. But of course there's already 100 million patterns named Rose, something, this and that, in all the pattern databases. So I'm giving a number AF101. It is called the Chikan Rose Pullover. Chikan is the name of the yarn. This is from Sierra Yarns. This is Sierra Yarns Chikan. That's how I'm pronouncing it. I have no idea if that's the right way. I looked it all up and there's pronunciations. It was Chikan, Chikan, and chicken. I don't want to call it chicken because I think people will actually type in the word chicken and it won't come up. So to make things less confusing, I'm going with Chikan. So it's C-H-I-K-A-N. So Chikan is an alpaca blend. It is a worsted weight, 70% baby alpaca, 23% polyamide, and 7% wool. It is a worsted weight. I did use a very large size needle for this pattern because I wanted to have a very, very loose drape. What I've been doing with Sierra Yarns, we've been doing a collection together. They are sending me patterns like this. This is machine knitted. And this is the Chikan in a gray. It's like a heathered gray. Absolutely beautiful. So they're sending me this. This was made on a knitting machine. They have been in the garment industry for a very long time. They have a mill in Peru. They've been making yarns. They've been making garments. They've now recently started selling their yarns to knitters. So I'm working with them and writing patterns based on machine knitted garments, and I'm translating them into what will work well for knitters. So first one I made was this one. This was my first version, and then this is my second version. So this is available in 9 sizes. I go from size 1 to size 9, which would be extra small to 5 times. Or 5X. Something I've used to help me size these is the Yarn Standards from yarnstandard.com. I can't get this online anymore, it's not working, but it goes from a size 1 to a size 9. It gives you all the sizes and the basic bust sizes and measurements and all that. I've used that form as a guide to help me figure out like bust sizes and hip sizes to armhole openings, to upper arm measurements. And as a knitter, I always encourage you to knit the size that works the best for you and to modify it to make it fit you. I have done my best to give as many options as I can in these patterns. I want it to be able to fit everyone, and again, I gave you enough to work from that if you need to modify it, add length, make it shorter, hopefully you should be able to do that. But with those 9 different sizes, there's only so many variations that I can do in a pattern and test. The Chikan yarn comes in skeins of 272 yards or 248 meters. This sample and this only took about 2.5 skeins. The one that I am wearing technically took 3 skeins, but on the pattern, this is a size 4, and on the pattern I put that it needs 4 skeins of yarn. So this came in under 3 skeins. So this weighs a little less than 300 grams, but I'm very nervous to put that you only need 3 skeins on the pattern, because if you put an extra row or if you do a swatch and you run out, that is the worst thing ever. So you can risk it, and as this gets test knitted more, maybe I'll modify that. That does only need 3, but I am nervous because it was so close to the actual yardage. So I did put that you need 4 for this, but I really think you can get away with 3. What I did on this one is I made a contrasting, I did the cast on row in a contrast color, and then the first 2 rows were in a contrast color. That's the rose. That was this pink here. And I did on the edge, I'll show you, I'll have to pull it up though, I think. On the edge, let's look at the pretty side. On the edge, I did 3 rows of contrast. So I really like how the contrast looks on this. I thought I just gave it a little pop. So the pattern really does only call for 1 color, but I did that just for fun, which you can easily throw on some worsted weight yarn for contrast on the cuff and on the bottom. I don't recommend it for the neck. I'll see if I get a little closer. So the neck is like a rolled brim. So I did put it on the neck, but when it rolled over, let's see if I can show you on the side. You get like that garter ridge. I guess it's different on here, but you get like it. Oh, because this is stocking knit. So you get on the inside. You saw that it just didn't blend right. I didn't really like it, and it was rolled, and so I pulled it out and went with the all one color. All right, the gauge is 12 stitches, and 16 rows equals 4 inch in stocking knit on a size 11 needle. You will need size 10 needles for the cuff and for the hem down here, and you will need 11s for the rest of it. If you want to tighten up the cuffs, if you want to make them a little bit tighter, you can just drop a needle size. The size 11, this is an airy, this is, I think it's like an air blown yarn. It is so warm though, it's so nice. The drape is extremely loose. It's really loose and open and airy and breathable. So it is a very loose gauge, so keep that in mind. It's not supposed to be knitted very tight. So I'm just going to read over my introduction. The Chikan Rose Pullover is knitted flat in pieces. First you'll make the front, and then you'll make the back. You work from the bottom up on both of them, and then you work the sleeves one at a time. The reason I am calling for you to work them in pieces and not in the round is something that I have found. The way yarn can change in color. This uses 1 full skein for the front, 1 full skein for the back, and then I use a skein, I split it in half for each sleeve. So I find that if you were using an Andee dyed yarn, or I find that I like to do it in pieces so that the yarn, it's really for color management, is one of the main reasons I like to work in pieces, so it has a consistent look. In case you had a skein from a different dye lot, I think it's just better to just do everything in one skein, and then another skein. And so that's one of my main reasons for making it flat. But the other reason is I did try to do the sleeves in a round. I thought, oh, I can just do the sleeves in a round. But like I said, it's a very loose gauge, and I used size 11 needles, and I had double points, but you could see the ladders. It's so loose that I could see, and I didn't like the way it looked. And I found that working back and forth made it nice and flat and a much more consistent garment, like a better fabric than trying to work around. I tried magic loop, but you could see where I was pulling it through. And maybe if it didn't have such a loose gauge that you could get away with it, but it just was much nicer looking if I worked flat. So that's the reason I work flat, because I know people ask me, can I do it in the round? Yes, you can do it in the round, but just know, the color, you're going to have to maybe alternate skeins, and also you're going to have to make sure you don't have any ladders coming up on the sleeves when you're working around. Alright, so like I said, the sleeves, so I call for in the pattern the tools that you'll need. You'll need a tapestry needle for weaving in ends, and you'll need scissors, and you'll need a tape measure. I like to use a counter to count my rows. I also called for 8 locking stitch markers, which I'll get into, and waste yarn and stitch holders, and that's just for the shoulder stitches here. So I just use waste yarn. You do a 3 needle bind off on your shoulders. So for the locking stitch markers, what you're going to do, you're going to work the front to a certain length that the pattern calls for. Then you're going to be asked to put a locking stitch marker. So you're going to put one over here, and you're going to put one over here. Those are going to indicate your armholes. Then you're going to continue working. Leave those stitch markers in there. You're going to work the back. Same thing. You work to a certain point, and the pattern is going to tell you to put 2 locking stitch markers. You can put progress keepers. You can put a scrap of yarn. You can put anything that indicates where you started the armhole shaping. So when you go back to seam it, you know those are the 2 points that need to go back together where you're going to be seaming. Again, on the sleeves, you're going to be working the sleeves flat, and as you come up, see if I can get this off. So on the sleeves, you're going to work up. So here's your armhole opening here. And then on the sleeves, and then you're going to start doing decreases up here. So here you're going to be doing your decreases. So having those locking stitch markers on the body are going to be here and here, and that's where those are going to be seamed. And then you're going to put locking stitch markers on the bottom underarm of your sleeve. That is going to be the widest part of your sleeve, just so you know, the most stitches, and then you're going to start to decrease. And those locking stitch markers, everything's going to end up right here together when you seam. So it's just a nice way to track to know you are and help you seam a little bit easier. And like I said, this will be a 3 needle bind off for the shoulder. Okay, let's keep going through the pattern. So those are the tools you're going to need. Skill level, I'm calling it intermediate. There is short row shaping for the neckline at the neck, which I've included YouTube tutorials. They're ones that I tend to reference a lot, and I don't feel the need to make my own tutorials because I think that the internet is saturated with tutorials. So I have links that I find helpful for like the mattress stitch and the 3 needle bind off. Also, I put in a tutorial about doing the short rows and working that stitch on the back side, how to pick up for it. So I'm notorious for like not picking them up right, so I did include that video. It's a video that I tend to reference quite often. I do know it. I feel like I know it by heart, but if I go a couple months without picking up short rows on the wrong side, it slips my mind. So I just include that in there just to help. You know, you don't want to make a beautiful garment and then not pick up your wrap turns correctly. So I did include that at the end. That's under the special instructions. So skills you're going to need is knit and purl. You're going to be working flat, back and forth. I used about a 32-inch long needle. You're going to do stocking stitch for most of it. Like I said, there's going to be wrap turns. You're going to make some increases. You're going to make one right, make one left. Those directions are in here. And there's some decreases such as the SSK and the knit two together. I've included a chart and a schematic. So here's a schematic. I'll do a quick whew. So got me. I work very hard on these. This doesn't look like much. It takes me forever. So with the 9 sizes, what I do is I give you your hips for your body size. I give you hips for the garment size, the bust circumference size, the body size, and then the garment size. The neck opening, the shoulders, the cuffs, the upper arm circumference, and then the underarm sleeve length, and then the front length and the back length. So the front length and the back length is just a couple inches longer than the front. So what I recommend for people to do is figure out that you measure your bust, and you always want to be the garment size to be at least 4 inches bigger than your bust size. Now, if you can see, this is super roomy. It is so comfy cozy. So it's meant to be oversized. It's about 10 inches of ease at the hips, and it's about 4 to 6 inches up at the bust. Because you have these sleeves, they're super comfy. It's a very roomy, everyday, livable garment. You can live in this thing. But you'll see on the chart, there is the body. The garment size is approximately 6 inches larger than your bust and about 10 inches larger at your hips. That's approximately. It's a very loose fitting garment, very cozy. And so the sleeve length, the underarm sleeve length is the same on all. from here to here. I find there's not that much variation in that size, and there's not much variation in a cuff size. So you can easily tighten up the cuff by using smaller needles, and if you feel the cuff is too tight, you can just use bigger needles. I call for a technique in this pattern that's the long-tailed tubular cast on, which I include a link to, but I just wanted to show it. So as you can see how it looks like it's how it rolls over? So that's for a 1x1 rib with a long-tailed tubular cast on. This is something I can do in my sleep. I just pick up the yarn and I can do it. I did include a tutorial. You can cast on any way that you want. You can do any loose cast on, but this is the one I preferred. If you don't know how to do it, this is a good pattern to learn it on, because you only have to do one row and then you just start working. You only have to do one row for the cast on and then you just start working in pattern. Alright, to begin, you're going to work the front, like I said, from the bottom up, and then you're going to work, there's some shaping for the armholes. Then you're going to go onto the back and follow the same directions for the front, although you're going to be adding a couple inches. If you want to shorten the pattern, if you want to shorten the overall length of this pattern, that is the place you're going to do it. You're going to be doing it in part 2 for the front body and for the back body. So part 2 is where you'll alter the length. If you want it to be shorter, you'll take away a couple inches there, and then the back you'll take a couple inches away. So just do the same, write down if you took away an inch on the front, make sure you take away an inch on the back, vice versa. If you add evenly on both sides. So then part 3, there's the armhole shaping. There's some minor shaping in the armholes, and then you work the shoulder shaping. Like I said, there's some short row shaping, and then you work the neck. The neck is worked flat, and then you join at the end. You're going to be seaming the neck together. Like I said, back works the same. Okay, the sleeves are worked flat. They're worked from the cuff up. Again, you're going to do that tubular cast on. You're going to work up to the shoulder, following the directions. The sleeves are long, but they are long and cozy. I know it's kind of hard to see in here, but they're just snuggle. Alright. And then there's finishing. I write the directions for the seaming. So what we did first was I seamed the shoulders. First you're going to seam with the 3-needle bind off. You're going to seam the sleeves to the body. I recommend every time you do a mattress stitch to take a new piece of yarn. Don't use the yarn like your tails that are left on your project. If you do a mattress stitch and it doesn't work out right, you put it on, it didn't seem to fit right, you can just pull the mattress stitch out. It's just one thing of yarn. You can pull it out, and maybe you want to add some extra width to it. So I don't, or you can even take it in more. You can mattress stitch, bring in a couple extra inches. You can actually make it a little bit smaller. But if you use a tail of yarn that's from your project that was like left, where you were knitting, you can't just rip it out. So I always recommend using a new thread of yarn. And for the shoulders in particular, take how long you're going to need to seam your shoulder. You're going to thread it on your tapestry needle, and you're going to start at the very tip. So here's where the shoulder seam is here. This is your 3-needle binder, and this is where your sleeve is here. You're going to pick up right from the middle, and you're going to work from here and down. So down to the armpit. And again, like I said, you should have a locking stitch marker here. Where you'll see, you'll just go all the way down to the end. So then the other end, there should be another tail. So if you split the yarn that your yarn you're using for seaming in half, one end's going to go this way, and then you come back to the top, and then you go back down to the bottom. If you start from the armpit and work your way up, it can get wonky. Here's the tippy top. You may miss a little bit, and it doesn't even out right. So I recommend starting at the top and going down and down. It's easier to fudge stitches in the underarm than it is up here. So I did include that in the pattern. That's there too. So that's the seaming, and then once these are attached, then you're just going to seam up the sides here. And here is 2. So as you can see, the front is shorter than the back. and you don't seam the ribbing. I hope I'm recording. Usually it tells me the time. So thank you very much if you are test knitting this for me. Thank you for taking time to watch this video and test knitting for me. If you have purchased this pattern from me, thank you very much for supporting me in purchasing this pattern, and I hope this video was a help with you making this pattern.